Okay, so I wasn't necessarily sure if I was going to do this or if I was going to wait later, but we're going to call this the summer's tier list for now. That might be subject to change, given that there probably will be more patches over the course of the summer. But we're going to start with Thatch. We're going to end with Reno. We're going to see what's changed in the most recent patch. I think overall, there's been a couple shifts, a couple big shifts, but other than that, there's some characters that were very strong last patch that are still just as strong this one. So this time around, I added an A+ tier, and we're going to start off by putting Thatch there. Thatch, a character that I think has gotten a lot more recognition as of late. I will say, though, the one thing that does still kind of hold him back is the fact that at base, he is a 3 defense legend. You can bump him up to 4. I don't think, though, you necessarily need to. You could play strength stance. If you want, you can play that defense stance. Either way, he's fantastic, and he fits the role of a glass cannon pretty well. Another Blasters character. I'm going to say Ada honestly falls into A. I think I might have had Ada quite a bit lower last time, but Ada this time around, I'm going to put her a little bit higher. Spear is still very, very good, even with being hit as hard as it was. The big thing is, though, the 3 defense does definitely drop her a bit. With that being said, it doesn't hurt to take away a stat to put it into her defense. I'm pretty sure it's even dex that you do take away, so it kind of works out nicely. Also, the SIGs on her have gotten buffed over time, so that's very, very nice as well. Katars did get hit, but I don't think that necessarily hurts Sentinel too much. I mean, Katars and Hammer did get hit. Now, Hammer and Light has a little more lag, and then you also have Katars. You can't do Side Light, D-Light unless you have 5 dex or higher. Luckily, though, that's not a problem for Sentinel. That kind of just means if you're going to be playing a lot of Katars, you're going to want to take that stance. So, that being said, Sentinel is going to remain in S tier. The stats are still amazing even when you do take the dex stance, and then also I think the weapon pairing is it's phenomenal, and then the signatures really, really help him a lot. I'm going to go ahead and put Lucian in A. Lucian, I think, has one of the best Katar kits in the game, and if Blasters were just inherently stronger, his strength wouldn't be as much of a problem. But as we've seen in the past, he's gotten a decent amount of nerfs. His stats are fantastic. It's just that it's kind of hard to kill with him, especially if you're stuck on Blasters. I think that's already a complaint from Blaster players. So if you're stuck with Blasters on Lucian, that can be a bit of a problem, although I think the Katars more than make up for it. So he sits comfortably in A. Given that I'm looking at this overall and not just one game mode in particular, at this point I can't ignore it. I'm going to put Taros in S. They've given him some really good buffs. I think some buffs that were good for the character overall. But it's at a point right now where you have things like on Hammer side sig, you have Axe D sig. He already has a ton of force, and his speed isn't super fast. It's just that in 2s he's fantastic at killing, and setting up combos and stuff allows you to get a lot of damage quick. The stats are fine, and even in 1s, he only really loses to those characters that I think Sword's a terrible matchup for him. And also I think the other characters in S are slightly better than him. So I would say, right now, I know there's only 2, but let's say Taros is S, but he's going to be lower at the end. I'm not, ranking these in any particular order, but I will, distinguish where I think some characters are just to maybe help people visualize it better. Okay, Brynn I also think I had a little bit lower this time, but I honestly feel like if I'm putting Taros up here, I'm going to put Brynn up here as well. Brynn did get D-Sig nerfed a little while back now. With that being said, though, I think Spear is still really, really good, even with it being nerfed. The signature kit overall, looking at Axe and Spear, is insane. And she's a really good 2s character, and she's a really solid 1s character if you're looking for that. The Axe N sig especially is just straight up unholy. You can have every other sig be bad on that character, right? The Axe N sig on Brynn is comparable to that of N sig on Val, I honestly think. Maybe a little worse, but it's just that sig hits in so many odd places. I just don't expect it to hit sometimes when it does. And I think that really, really helps her. If you tuned your signature kit down a bit, then you might see her drop, but I can't see that happening now. It didn't, and I don't see it happening in the foreseeable future. One of the easier ones on this tier list, I'm going to put the Cat up in S tier. I think that Asuri right now is really shining, especially given that she's not affected at all by the Katar change that happened, and also Sword did get that 1 damage buff, but that's borderline. You can neglect that. I don't think Sword, I don't know why they gave Sword that buff, but that's not really that important. You can still take away a dex from her, and you can run 6 dex, and then you can gain an extra strength, so you'll have 5 strength with basically No downside, so that's really, really nice. The sword pairing with guitars is also really, really good, and she's just a like super stable character. She's one of those characters where you can pretty much like main her for a very long time, and almost always she's going to be good. Barraza really hasn't seen too much love as of late, but with that being said, I still think because Axe didn't have any changes to it, and his Axe kit is particularly strong, I think he can sit comfortably in A. Now, blasters, love him or hate him, they do good damage, and then also like his signatures, they still kill pretty early, and they have like good usage, especially when you look at the potential as Barraza as a character in twos. Way too many words, but yeah, in twos he's fantastic. In ones he does have his weaknesses, like a character like Taros. I just think that basically Taros would be dropped down to A if he received some of the same nerfs that like Barraza did, right? With like Barraza used to have an insane D6. If that D6 still remained, I think without a doubt Barraza would have like the kill potential that would just instantly put him into S. But right now he's gonna be sitting in A, and I think he's probably gonna remain there. Okay, so Ember is a character that I think is kind of like Thatch, a little bit of a glass cannon. Did see some nerfs, obviously, because bow got hit pretty hard, at least compared to some other weapons in this patch, and then Katars also did see some change. However, the Katar changes are not nearly as big, just like Asuri, because Ember does have a base higher dex. You're pretty much always going to be wanting to run defense stance. I feel like not doing that is, you know, that makes your life a lot harder. But I think the signature kit on this character is just insane overall. And Bow, if Bow didn't get hit, I honestly would accept at this point that Ember probably gets floated up into S. But Bow did get a little bit of a change. You know, it lost some true combos, and some moves don't feel nearly as free to throw out. But with that being said, Ember still does have the Bird, which is just one of the best moves in the game, you know, period. That thing's a light attack. It covers so much. And it's always surprising to not see any changes to it. A character that's kind of hard to rank like Ember because you don't see too many of them. Azoth, I'm going to say, is A+. I don't remember where I had him before, but like I said, his Axe kit is insane. His stats are overall, you know, they're pretty even. They're okay. There's nothing that's, like, particularly crazy about them. Again, Bow did see a little bit of nerfs. I just haven't been playing enough Bow, so it's kind of hard for me to really gauge this. But overall still feels pretty good, but I will say, and from what I've heard, I think it makes sense, you know, to have Azoth be high up. I'm just not going to push him any further. Okay, another easy one, just given the state that Sword's in, even though Hammer did see some nerfs. Hammer pairing with Sword, great. The signature's great. The stats, great. Not really much else to say about Bodvar. He's just, again, a staple character, a character you can almost always play, and I think he has held his spot in S. It's hard to say where I exactly really think Koji is. He's the only bow character I've been playing since the patch, and he's gotten nerfs like consistently over a couple patches. First to some SIGs on Sword, I think, and then he also did get, you know, hit by the bow nerf. With that being said, I think he's such a good character that he still holds his spot in S. I don't think that's really too hard to dispute. His bow kit's crazy. His sword kit is still really, really good. The stats, you know, the stats aren't even that big of a deal to a lot of Koji players because you can take away Dex and then you can add that so he has 5 defense. He just feels good to play, and I think, you know, you're gonna see a lot of Sword in S for sure. I may change this at the end along with some other characters, but for now, I honestly think it's a safe thing to put like Ulgrim in A. Lance did get some buffs to, I believe, Nair in particular, so now you have some like Nair combos back, you know, into recovery. I think you can do into Sair. There's some stuff on platforms you can do that's actually pretty sick. So Ulgrim, he's always been that character. I mean, he has Axe with him, right? His Axe has some pretty good 6. The stats are amazing for him. And then Lance has seen, I guess, a bit of a revival. Obviously, no one's still playing it aside from Kostelix, really. But, you know, it did see a little bit of a buff. So I think it's only fair to put Ulgrim in A. Diana, another character who has been hit by a couple patches in a row. I still think Diana, just because the bow kit in particular is so strong, I think she's a pretty easy A+. The stats as well, right? You can take speed stance, and now you have a 7-speed character with bow and blasters, and I think that is very, very good. I wouldn't be surprised if some people thought she was lower, but with that being said, I think she's a pretty safe pick to put in A+. I feel like, at least in NA, the only representation I really see of Jala, or it's usually Finn in his case, yeah, Jala, Finn, whatever. Pugsy's really the only person I see playing this character, and it surprises me because I feel like there could be a lot of people who do a lot of work with Jala. Jala's kit just all around, when you think of axe, when you think of this sword, there's some really fast sigs. There's some sigs that have crazy hitboxing. They do a lot of force. You know, you give that defense stance. I think it does take away a dex. The character feels pretty good to play, and honestly has a lot going for them, especially since axe, I think, is one of the stronger weapons in this patch along with sword. So I think Jala, you know, the only thing that I guess you could say holds her back is the fact that she is base 3 defense, and a lot of the times people are going to be running her 4 defense. Easily one of the sleeper picks of the latest couple patches, and lately just in the game in general. Core is so good, and it always feels like no one's playing him. The only person I see ever really play Core now is Boomy, and the last time I saw that was a while ago, and he was playing like the forearms, right? Just the SIGs, they're so simple. They do so much force, right? You still have D-Light and SIG on Hammer, which does a lot of damage and a lot of force. And the pairing is also very, very good. Gauntlets, we all know. Potentially, if not the best weapon in the game, so it just makes sense that Core goes here. Okay, Wu Shang. I have nothing much to say about this guy. He's somehow survived so many patches, and he's starting to look like potentially the best gauntlet character in the game, alongside being, I think, the best spear character in the game. The dex is perfect for him as a gauntlet and spear character, right? He can get Nair into Sair True. He can get Sair into Enlight True on spear. You can do some crazy things with the SIGs on gauntlets. I mean, dude, the D-Sig on gauntlets is a straight up vortex. Like, that thing's a black hole, and you can also get like a little charge on it, and you can do like 30 plus damage with it alongside just killing earlier. And that's just one SIG, right? The whole kit, there's not even a single SIG. You could say spear D-Sig on him is bad, but there's still some ways you can use it where if you hit it, you're going to be spiking the person and killing them in just like yellow. So I think Shang, he stays up top. You know, some people, most people probably nowadays, the Poe, he's going to be staying up here. Easily one of the best legends in the game. Val, you could probably say, is possibly, I'm not going to say it for sure, but I know a lot of people do think that Val is the best character in the game. I've played Val for a long time, and again, it's mind-numbing to me how Val has made it through several patches without things that actually need adjusted, being adjusted, right? You have Val Ensig. I don't know how Val Ensig on Sword has not been tuned whatsoever. You look at the stats, right? You're able to take away a dex and you can play 7 defense, 7 speed, 4 strength, 4 dex. I used to think it messed with me a lot, but the more I played it, I got used to it very, very quick. Val's just an insane character in 1v1s. It counters a lot of other characters, right? Like, I was talking about Taros earlier, how Taros loses to like some sword characters. I think like that's a very, very bad matchup for him. I think Val is the worst matchup for a character like Taros, right? Val just has all the tools, all the killing ability, the stats to back it up. It's just a fun legend to play, realistically a very easy legend to play given the SIGs. And also, I think that this character is one of the few characters in the game that can actually make a difference depending on what map you go to, right? Some people like to run it to Mammoth Fortress every time. I think a character like Val, you should always be running Demon Island, Crystal Temple, Shipwreck when you can, just stuff that has the smallest ledges in the game, because you have a side SIG that has 3 different versions, right? You have the on stage, you have the off stage, and then you have like the wall version, which I think actually a lot of people forget about, but it has its uses as well. So Val's just one of those characters where you can play to her strengths to such an extent that you can't necessarily to some other legends. Every legend you can to a degree, but not to the degree that Val has the capability of. I feel like it's only appropriate at this point that I include Ragnir and S, just given how I've done the tier list so far with some of these other picks in here. Ragnir has a super like well-rounded Katard kit, I think, and then he does have Axe, which, you know, the Axe side SIG, I think in particular, did get nerfed. The D SIG is okay. It doesn't really do much killing, but the Axe N SIG is a freak of nature. That move makes up for the rest of the kit maybe not always doing its job and killing, or, you know, I guess being usable to a degree. But when you look at the Katars, like I said, super well rounded. The weapon pairing's really good. He's one of those Katar legends you could play in 1s or 2s as well, which I think helps him out a lot. And the stats, he does have 6 decks to start. I've seen some people bring him up to 7 dex, but I think a lot of people, especially now with the Qatar changes, I think they might take away that dex and add to the defense, which means he'll have 7 defense if you're going to run defense stance, which is just, that's really, really good. Ragnar, it's a character, like, I feel like a lot of people forget. They just forget how good he is. You see him played a decent amount in a lot of regions. I know in NA, right? Stingray Pierre, they're probably the biggest proponents of him. And when you see them play him, like, he just looks so, so good. If you guys didn't think I had a hot take yet, well, here it is. I'm just going to put Cross in S. You might not think blasters are aren't the greatest weapon in the game, and I don't doubt you. But it's pretty impossible to look past just how good his gauntlet signatures are in general. Like, every gauntlet signature has a great use, and the killing power behind them is ridiculous. Also, the stats are crazy. You can take them down to 3 dex, and if you're going to be playing gauntlets most of the time, which I think on Cross you probably should, you're not really going to feel them at all. So that's insane, right? That's awesome if you're a Cross player to be able to do that, and you're just going to be getting a lot of super early kills. I just think, like, Cross is always like, oh yeah, that character has so much force on these SIGs, and then you only see, like, you see nobody really make use of him. He has such, like, good potential, and I think he may have some of the strongest, if not the strongest, hitting signatures in the game. So Cross, I'll say it, he's my, like, hot take. I'm putting him in S. We'll see if he stays there. I think Scythe is in a pretty good state right now. I think it's pretty strong right now, but that's not necessarily why you're going to see me put Mirage here in S. I think that Mirage just has ridiculous SIGs when it comes to her overall kit, right? You have Spear Side Sig, you have Spear D Sig, you have Spear End Sig, you have I mean, just everything. I think the whole kit overall, they all do so much force. Some of them, right, some people may be able to ignore them, and that's fine, because Spear D Sig and then also Scythe D Sig make up for it easily. Both those weapons, just how they work, I mean, they literally cover the whole character. The weapon pairing I don't think is the best, but when you have SIGs like that, it's just like Cross. It's really hard to ignore. And I also think the stats are pretty solid as well. I am looking at both 1s and 2s. If I was looking at just 2s, obviously Cassie would probably be like A+, maybe S. But given that I'm also looking at 1s, it's hard to really justify putting her higher than A. The SIGs carry her so hard. Blasters, though, not really, you know, they're not fantastic by any means. They can do their job pretty well. They get damage pretty good. Hammer, did see a little bit of a nerf. I don't think, though, Hammer really got that much worse, although I'm, you know, no Hammer player. But because her speed is so low, I will put her in A. If she didn't have the 6 to back her up, she would be way lower, but she does have the 6 to back it up, so she gets to hold this spot. I'm going to go ahead and put Nyx in S tier. I think that Nyx has, like, an absurd signature kit, especially on Scythe. The weapon pairing, some people, I understand why they struggle with it. She can be a hard legend to play, because if you're not playing great with Scythe and blasters, then you're going to probably have a very bad time playing her. But luckily for you, she has stats that are insane, and she has very high defense and very high speed. So that's also super, super nice. There's not really much else to say about this character. If you're able to play her well, then she's going to shine, and she's going to be insane to play against. And to keep the S train going, yes, Mordex is S tier. His gauntlets are ridiculous. Gauntlets in general, right, are already really good as, like, just a base weapon, and then you add the signatures that he has on it. I also think he's the best Scythe in the game still. And yeah, I mean, the stats are really, really good. He's just, if you are wanting to play Scythe, I think that everyone has, like, messed around with Mordex at least, like, you know, every once in a while, because he is a very, very fun legend. He's a very, very good legend. Just the design overall is such a good carry for him. And, you know, his weapons are in a very, very good spot. Yumiko, you could probably argue for A or A+, but I'm going to go ahead and throw her an A. We don't really see too many Yumikos, if at all. I think Yumiko does have some really good signatures, specifically on Hammer. The bow is a little underwhelming, and bow did get nerfed along with Hammer, albeit Hammer nerfs, again, they weren't really that big of a deal, I don't think. The stats don't really help her case either. I don't think you need or really want the stats that she has. With that being said, though, if it's the right patch, I think Yumiko is very, very good. There are a couple things that hold her back, specifically on her bow, right? You can use D-Sig over ledge. I think that's, like, the primary use of D-Sig on bow, but if you like if you get hit by that over edge, then you're gonna be like popped out of it, and then it's kind of useless. So using D-Sig as a ledge trap tool, you can't, so that makes D-Sig basically useless, because the chances of you using that on stage and it actually hitting or being the best option is very, very low. I feel like I don't even need to go into that much detail on Artemis. Artemis signature kit, every single signature on this legend is insane. Just to name a few, or I guess the big one, the main offender, is like Lance side sig. I don't know how that sig has not been nerfed at all. Artemis also, I'm pretty sure in the last patch, if not the previous, I think it might have been the previous, actually received buffs. Doesn't make sense. Lance in this last patch did receive buffs, so I think I did have her in like A maybe, but this only brings her up into S if she wasn't already. The stats are also just fantastic, possibly the best stats on any Lance or Scythe character. Like, she's just, if you like Scythe, then I think you should try her out, because you can play 9 speed without basically any downside. You just lose a dex, you have 4 strength, you have 4 dex, you have 5 strength, you have 5 defense, and then you have 9 speed. So it's kind of, you know, just a little bit overboard, right? Just a really fun, fast character that has some signatures that are unreal, that shouldn't exist in the game, basically. I'm only putting him here because he keeps getting buffed. Caspian's gonna sit in A+. Listen, Caspian is held back by the fact that he has Katars and Gauntlets. You don't really need those paired together. With that being said, the signatures are getting to a point where they are hitting the point of like, okay, they are pretty crazy. Like, it doesn't even make sense for him to have, you know, a side sig that hits this hard. But he does. So he's going to be in A+. I mean, the stats are also all right. I don't think he's a bad legend by any means. It sometimes feels unnecessary to have both Gauntlets and Katars paired together. So that's why I wouldn't put him in S tier. Okay, I'm going to put Sidra in A+, not because I don't think she is super good or has like some crazy things about her, or, you know, the stats I think are very good. I think the weapon pairing's very good. I think some sigs like Sword D sig and then also like Cannon N sig, both of those are very, very good. However, it's kind of a question of almost why would you play her sword, right, when you could play directly a better character like Val. It's kind of the same thing with Caspian. Why would you ever play Caspian when you could play Val or Asuri, 2 legends that I think at least are better than him? Because, you know, a big part of it, the weapon pairing does help a lot. Also, you know, their stats and signatures are very, very good. That's aside the point. But yeah, Sidra, it's kind of the same deal. So that's why Sidra's sitting in A+. I'm going to go ahead and say Zol's going to reside maybe towards like the top of A. I think some people, including myself, get a little hung up by how much strength he has. It's very, very good, and I think it's nice because it means he doesn't have to rely on sigs like at all because he has that high of strength. With that being said, though, his signature kit isn't really anything special. There's like a lot of signatures on his kit that do feel pretty underwhelming, especially given the kind of force he has. And then you look at a character, you know, like Taros that I have in S, right? You look at his signatures, and they're doing so much more force, or even you look at Cross, right? Now, they both those legends can be, 9 strength, but it doesn't necessarily make sense that the highest strength legend in the game is hitting not nearly as hard or harder than like Taros, Cross. You know, you can find probably like Shang, maybe those characters. Also, I think he is a legend that right now is getting hurt pretty bad by the characters that I do think are at like the tippity top. For example, Val, Asuri. I think like sword characters, gauntlet characters can do very, very well into Zol. With that being said, though, I think, you know, if you're new to canon or if you're looking for a character that you don't have to rely sigs for, like you don't have to rely on the sigs, then go to Zol by all means. So out of all legends in the last patch, I think Kaya got possibly hit the hardest, maybe aside from like Nai. You know what? I'll put her in A. I already thought that she was mainly good in just 2s, and since I'm trying to consider both game modes, at least to some degree, I can't help but think that in 1s, this character is... Why would you ever play Kaya in 1s? She does have high defense, she does have some good sigs, but especially now, when you have like so much lag on certain moves, you know, on Spear, on bow, it just doesn't make as much sense why would you play this character when you could play, if you're looking for bow, you could play Koji instead. If you were looking for Spear, you could play, I don't know, Hattori, you could play Shang. It just doesn't make much sense. So I think that for now, because of the stats and certain signatures and her 2's capability, we'll put Kai in A. I'm going to go ahead and do this. Some people might disagree. I'm going to say Isaiah's in B tier. I think cannon as a weapon is pretty good. I think on Isaiah, Isaiah does have some strengths, which is why, B tier, right? That's still above average. You have NSIG on both his weapons. The stats, though, not too fantastic. I also think the Blaster's kit and, like, aside from 1 or 2 SIGs, his signature kit overall, just not that great. And it's just a question of, again, why would you ever play Isaiah when you have so many better cannon players or cannon legends at your disposal? I have a feeling a good amount of you are waiting to see where I put this guy. The most recent buffs were honestly pretty good for him. I'm going to go ahead and say he's probably like lower end of A+. I think that his sword now is just undeniably ridiculous. I think the stats, though, hold him back a lot. With that being said, though, I've kind of determined that I think he is the easiest Scythe to play if you're just looking at the Scythe, right? Not like, you're ignoring the sword. And also if you're ignoring the signatures on Scythe, if you're not looking at those. There's certain true combos that he can get that I'm pretty sure no other Scythe character, maybe aside from maybe Volkov, can get. Right? You have like the Serendinaire. And then you also, I believe you have Dare into like D-Light. And then I think you can do Dare, Stare as well, True. Those might be the 3 things he has. Don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty confident that he has those 3 that other characters don't. But with that reward of higher decks and actually being able to like find certain things that are like better, I guess, compared to other Scythe legends, the stats just, it kills him so much. Also, the signatures on Scythe aren't that crazy. You have to play Jiro a lot differently than a character like Mordex. I feel like Mordex, you can be maybe a lot more aggressive, whereas Jiro, I feel like you have to pick your spots maybe a little better because a lot of the times you're not going to have too many freebies aside from maybe throwing out like NSIG and I guess, your DSIG over Edge on Scythe. But yeah, the buffs they gave him, not the buffs I would have done to Jiro, but undeniably he's become a lot better of a character. Okay, the Yellow Man, we're just going to plop him straight up in A+. Spear, nerfs, yes. Did Orion directly get changed? No. Lance, a bit of a buff. He's just like a staple as far as Lance characters go. Like, you can almost always main Orion, and I think that character is going to almost always be strong. The like signature kit and the stats carry him super hard no matter where exactly the weapons are at. And the weapons he has, like I said, Spear especially did get nerfed, but it's not even that bad. It's gotten a little more balanced. It makes a lot more sense as a weapon. So I think Orion is comfortably in A+. I'm going to say Lin Fei kind of has the same problem that Isaiah does. It's always the question of why would you ever play either of these canon characters when you could play, like I said, literally any of the others. Lin Fei, notoriously like underplayed, probably because of the low strength, even though like some of the signatures are very, very good. And when you have Katars benefiting from Dex a lot, she's instantly, she instantly moves up through the ranks. But right now, I don't think that's necessarily the case, even with the last balance patch that had Katars affected. There's really good SIGs on Lin Fei. Like, I'm not going to deny that. It's just, again, the question, like with Sidra, why would you ever play any of them when you could play Onyx, which, we'll get to later. Part of me almost doesn't want to rank Zariel because I don't even know where to put Zariel. But we'll give Zariel the benefit of the doubt. Zariel will go in A+. Zariel, bow, pretty good still. The bow SIGs, I think, are pretty good. The gauntlet SIGs, I think, are very good, and gauntlets are also just super, super strong. The stats, it's basically like the Barraza of bow and gauntlets. That's kind of how I think of Zariel. I think Zariel has a lot of potential, but it's just no one's really wanting to play Zariel, right? Why would you invest time into a character like Zariel, which may be harder to, when you could just play Val? That's honestly probably a lot of the thought process that goes behind it. Sword's easier, Sword is better. It's one of the best weapons in the game right now. And Val also has gauntlets that has signature kits that are just as strong, and if not stronger, and also stats that are just better. BMG has tried so hard to make this guy relevant, and honestly, I think it's kind of paid off. I think he's just such an easy S tier right now, right? Especially given Axe didn't get hit at all and Gauntlets only slightly got touched. The signature buffs that they've given to this guy are tremendous. I don't know why I've never really considered playing this guy. He's just one of those characters, unfortunately, that I don't think I really have too much fun with, but a lot of people do, and a lot of people have showcased why exactly this character deserves his spot up here. I mean, you know, I could go on D-Sig on Axe. Pretty much the whole Gauntlet kit. The signature kit in general is crazy. GC side sig on Axe, like, it's pretty non-committal. D-Sig on Axe, like I said, I mean, that moves crimes against humanity if you hit someone with it. And then you look at Gauntlets. It's kind of weird how it works. It pretty much, once you hit like a certain threshold in charge time on his Gauntlet end sig and his Gauntlet side sig, then you're going to get the maxed out versions where all of a sudden, you know, he hits you from halfway across the map. That doesn't make sense at all to me. I don't know why they wouldn't do like a quality of life change where it's kind of like, oh, okay, you charge it this amount of time, now it's going to go a little bit farther. Oh, you get the max time, now you're going to get the full length. I don't know why once you charge it for 0.25 seconds, you get to hit someone literally halfway across the map. It's just one of those things where it's like, why? It doesn't make sense. That design doesn't make sense, but here we are, and there he is. Dusk is like eternally that character that will get buffs that people ask for, right? Especially when it came to the last one, which was being able to have his D-Sig on Spear hit through one jump height platforms. Everyone was like, oh yeah, that's so cool. In the previous patch, everyone was like, oh my gosh, Dusk got buffs. That's like insane. You know what they did? Nobody played him. With that being said, though, I'm going to plop him in S just for funsies more than anything. No one's really playing him. I just feel like there's just such a lack of interest in this guy, right? There's a lot of other orb characters. Like, all the orb characters are very good, and I think that's why you see such little representation of Dusk, is because people get caught up in other characters. But his signature kit's so good. The stats, yeah, you know, they could be better. But with that being said, like, people just don't care about Dusk. I don't care about Dusk. I'll say it. I'll be the first to admit it. I don't care about this legend whatsoever. However, an orb legend that people do care about, that I also will throw in S tier, is Fate. Fate, I mean, still the best signatures as far as orb is concerned, right? The stats are also ridiculous. Scythe's also very, very good. I don't think I really need to go into any more details aside from basically she's more relevant than Dusk. All right. Because, you know, gauntlets are gauntlets. Petra has the stats. We've been through this before. It's basically same situation as Fate, except that I think Petra has the best gauntlet signatures in the game, if not contested maybe by Shang. But between the stats, the weapons, it's really hard to, you know, argue that she would go literally anywhere else. Thor, right? They did nerf Orb. They did nerf Hammer a little bit. But again, I will remind you, I am considering 1s and 2s. And with that being said, given I'm, you know, thinking about 2s, this character's got to go in S tier. Thor, I think, is one of the best characters to have on your team in 2s. He's got the kill potential. He's got the stats, and he's got a great weapon in like Orb that just allows like your teammate, if they are playing Thor, if you're playing Thor, just to go absolutely bonkers on the other team. So he gets to stay in S. And I think that actually, what does that mean? Literally every Orb character is in S tier. Now, I'm not saying Orb's the best weapon in the game. It's just that when you look at what each Orb character has when it comes to signatures and stats especially, it's ridiculous, right? Let me just talk about that for a second. You can go down to 3 decks. It doesn't really matter to him. You can go down to 3 decks. It doesn't really matter for her. Can go down to 3 decks. Doesn't really matter. And you can take away a dex, and then you could be at, what, 7 strength? So at worst, you have Dusk. At best, you have, like, Fate if you're looking at Orb. And then, you know, one of the Orb characters is the best Gauntlet character in the game. So it's just, like, you have just so much value in playing any of the Orb characters right now that even if Orb isn't one of the best weapons, it's just, it goes beyond that, basically. I may be overrating this character slightly just because people don't know how to play against him and no one's really playing him too much. With that being said, though, I think Vector's pretty good, right? The stats pretty solid, and certain signatures like Lance and Sig, I think is one that you can catch a lot of people off guard with. Also, the bow kit is absurd. I think a lot of people don't even, like, that should be the first thing that comes to mind, honestly, if you're thinking of Vector, is the bow kit. But it's not. It's like Lance and Sig instead, which is, you know, it's very, very good. But It's just gonna be a matter of time till we probably see someone absolutely go crazy with Vector. I know the only time I've seen Vector played in tournament is Stingray in Mammoth Cup, and that was the final game of the tournament, I'm pretty sure, and it did not end well for him, I'll just say that much. But Vector still has super high potential, especially with Lance receiving a bit of a buff in the last patch, although, you know, again, Bo did get hit considerably. Okay, another hot take, and probably one of the more sleeper picks of the, I guess, of the patch. Because Axe didn't get changed at all and Scythe didn't get changed at all, I think that naturally progresses Volkov up the ladder. Also, I think people get hung up on his stats a little bit too much. Yeah, his stats, you know, the 4 speed is super, super bad. In 2s, though, this character is a monster. And then in 1s, you can make him work. Some of his signatures are just so good. Like, I don't think there's a single signature on the kit that you can say is even mediocre. They're all good, or they're all, like, insanity. You know, specifically when I think of insanity, I think of the side sigs, and all the other sigs, you know, you could say they're pretty good. But yeah, I think they more than make up for the fact that his stats are not that great. And also, I think out of, you know, if you're not playing Mordex in 2s as a Scythe player, you should really consider looking into Volkov, because I think you can get just as much value as Mordex. I've been alluding to Onyx, like, ever since I started talking about, you know, the canon characters I put in B tier. Onyx, I'm going to put straight up in S tier. The gauntlets are so good. The stats are so good. I think Onyx is the best canon character in the game still. So it's kind of a question of almost, why would you play any other canon character right now, aside from, you know, maybe Sidra, if you're looking for something a little more, I guess, stable with having sword. But just the signatures are great. The stats are great. And also, yeah, if you're a canon player, why would you not want to play cannon paired with possibly one of the best weapons in the game with gauntlets? Okay, Vrax, again, another hard one to rate. I mean, we've seen Cody play this guy in 2s, but it's kind of like, that's really all. Well, I mean, I guess he's played him in 1s as well. He's really the only representation we've had. If you know how to place the signatures, I think Vrax is very, very good, especially when you consider the fact that, yeah, again, Lance did get a little bit of a buff. So there are a couple new things that add to Vrax. With that being said, it's just, unless you are very efficient with his SIGs and you know how to use them super well and you're willing to invest the time, I just don't know why you necessarily would play Vrax. Maybe you really think Lance, you know, the big damage you can get off on certain things, maybe that's worth it. I don't know. I feel like I don't need to spend any more time on this guy. So now we get to talk about Greatsword Legends. It's so hard because I don't know what to think of Greatsword at this point. I think you can get so much value off Greatsword, but there's like no one playing it, right? The only person that we've seen do big things with it is Sandstorm. Maybe in Parsec, I know Wrench has been practicing Mako a good bit. So maybe we'll see Wrench bust out the Mako and just go absolutely bananas with the character, and we'll actually start seeing how good Greatsword can be. With that being said, I still think Jaehyun's super, super solid, right? I think his sword alone is so good. His stats for sword and Greatsword both are very, very good. I almost always run strength stance. I never find a reason not to. The question is just, where does Greatsword lie? So I think putting him in A+ is kind of like the safe thing to do. And honestly, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and put Mako there as well. Because I really don't know. I truly don't know. I know they are both very, very good. They have good signatures. And when I'm looking at Katars and Sword of the respective legend, both of those are very good. Mako did get nerfed, I will say that. But yeah, both these characters, I think I'm safe, I guess, for the most part, putting them in A+. They're probably better, you know, I'll just throw them like towards the top. So, you know, visually, I guess it makes more sense, even though it's not ordered. But yeah, I think you guys get what I'm saying. So this guy is kind of reminiscent of Kaya. Therefore, I'm going to put him in A. I think that the signatures of this character really save him. I don't think he's that great of a 1s character necessarily. Obviously, you can see success with him, especially in 2s. 2s is where this character shines tremendously. But when you look at the nerfs he's gone through, especially with the spear nerfs, and he already does have a lower dex spear, I don't think it really does him any justice. It doesn't help him at all. If anything, obviously, it's only hurting him a lot more. So he's still good. But he's just kind of in the same boat as Kaya. So now that Jiro has moved up, obviously we need a new D tier character, right? With that being said, it is an I. I don't even know if they like play tested this, if they knew what they were doing when they did this change to Katars, because now Nai, in order to get Side Light, D Light True on Nai, you have to take Dex Stance. You know what Dex Stance does to Nai? If you want 5 Dex, it becomes 2 speed. That's unbearable. That's so bad that you have to make that decision. Because already what you're kind of forced to take on the character was speed stance. So now you get to go the opposite direction. You get to play 2 speed if you're really trying to play Nai. So I don't think Nai is really worth looking at. Like, I mean, people always said like Jiro was in a bad spot, but this is like, I think you can still play Nai, right? I'm not going to say Nai is an F tier legend. Like, you can never play Nai. You're never going to find success. But if you are finding success with Nai and you are not like just, you know, doing D-Light and Sig over and over and over again on Spear, like, all the power to you. You know, God bless, because this character is just, it got hurt big time. Hattori is kind of an easy placement, and I can speak from personal experience. This character's like, again, another character, kind of like I said, Val, Asuri, Bodvar, just one of those characters that has sword paired with spear, or spear in this case, and I don't think you're ever really going to see this character be extremely bad to the point where, you know, you're never going to be able to compete with them at a high level or find good success. I think the signature is the one thing that's going to hold her back, is sometimes maybe killing kind of stinks with the character, right? And also, if you are playing Spear right now, if you are a dedicated Spear main, I honestly don't know why you would be playing this character instead of just playing Shang. Like, maybe the stats, I guess. Maybe you like Sword that much, but I think Shang, especially with what he can do on gauntlets and just the signatures that he brings to the table, I almost feel like, again, it's a question of why not just play him instead. I'm not going to lie, I think I did Roland a little bit injustice in my last one. I'm going to bump up Roland and say Roland is in A tier. I think that he's a good character. If you're a sword player and you're trying to maybe figure out, I guess, a counter to like Katars, I feel like he's really, really good, because obviously the high defense, his signatures, there's a couple good ones, D-Sig on Lance, and then you also have his sword kit, which I think might be a little underrated. He's pretty good. I think compared to other sword legends, he doesn't stick out nearly as much, but you're going to be able to find success with him if you're committed to him. Honestly, at this point, the only thing that keeps Scarlet in A tier are the Sigs, and the Sigs alone. Scarlet, just like, again, this character is just such a, it's just literally Sig spam legend. People like to talk about Orion, you know, being like, oh, gold players play this character so they can spam signatures, whatever. But I honestly think this is the character to do it on, especially if you're in, you know, a lower rank, you're going to be able to get away with it a lot more. I think if her hammer Sigs were tuned down even a little bit, then I think you honestly might even see her drop further, especially when you have like options. Like, honestly, if I'm being real, when you have options like Vrax, Olgrim, Roland, like, all those characters bring more to the table than just, you know, some good signatures. Magyar is hard to place because it's not like his signatures necessarily pop out at anyone, but at the same time, he has Greatsword, and again, I don't know what the status is on that weapon. If that weapon is actually freakishly good, or if it's like, oh, you know, it can get really good damage off of a dodge, and that's kind of it. He has the super high defense, but other than that, you know, that really takes away from some of his other stats, and the signatures aren't anything super special. I think that some people undervalue them a bit, so we're going to put him in B, and we'll move on to Reno. Honestly, why not at this point? I had a little, you know, talk with my chat, and it only makes sense, I think, that we put Reno in S. I think that the combination of Orb and Guns is very, very good, right? The stats aren't anything special. They did nerf him in the last patch, but even with that being said, that was more to adjust him to make him not super overbearing. His Sigs are still very, very good. I don't think there's any Reno player, aside from, I guess, Cody, who's gonna, like, there's just no one really playing him, so it's hard to tell. Cody's the only guy I've seen play this character, and that's only been in 2s, which I think is where Reno shines more than, you know, 1v1s. So it'll be interesting to see the developments of this character. I think Reno, though, is super, super good. All right, so I made 2 changes at the very end. I did move up Azoth and I did move up Ulgrim. Other than that, though, the tier list did remain the same throughout. Hope you guys enjoyed. I don't know when the next one of these will be. It's hard to say. I don't really necessarily want to do one if they come out with a new patch, but we'll see. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, though, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace, everyone.